Welcome, 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 everyone, to another episode of Dialogue Over Division. And today I have Landon Johnston. And if you don't know who Landon is, it says right on his hat, recallmayorgondek.com. So I don't know too much about how you got started. What I do know is you're a Calgary resident that was a little bit upset with how things were going, and you decided to take some action, and you just looked into this recall legislation and you got started. So I would love to hear it from you. What was going on? What happened? And tell us. Well, maybe just let's start with who is Landon Johnston?
So I grew up in the Okanagan, basically up until I was like 20, and then I kind of just hopped around chasing girls. So Grand Prairie and Chilliwack, and then finally came into Calgary, and that's where I met my wife. Um, and then so we've been here since about 2012. I went into the army for a little bit, but then decided I wanted to get back into the trades, and so 2013 we moved to Calgary full time. And so since then I've just been running a business. I really don't like working for like bosses, and so I
Mhm.
found that if I work as my own boss, my hours were a lot more flexible and I could golf more. So for the past like 10, 11 years I've been running my own business, and it's been going really awesome. um, and I mean, my wife is a nurse, so she does okay. And so basically, it was February, early February, like late January, early February, when I kind of realized there was this legislation, and I saw that it happened in Riley, Alberta, which was successful because they have 400 people or something, like a very small town, and they only needed 40% of the entire town, which I believe they got pretty quickly. Um, and then they were able to get rid of a counselor, and that counselor, it was a whole lot cheaper and easier for the city to do this petition act than it was to go the legal way to get rid of this counselor. And the counselor was let go, and immediately, I don't know if he re-ran in the next like by-election, but anyway, the legislation worked properly, for a small town. And I was just like, wow, this really doesn't seem like it would be appropriate for a large city. But I am really mad and upset with the way our city's being ran. Um, and so I saw this as an opportunity, and I kind of waited a couple days. I'm like, maybe no one else has seen this before, and that's why nobody else has filed it. And then that's when I was like, you know what? No one else is going to do it. What's the worst that can happen? So I literally found $500 in my sock drawer, that I had saved up for a putter. So people don't realize how important that is to me. Um, but I literally just ran and filled it out, went to the city elections office, and the city election girls have been really awesome. They helped me like through the whole steps because this was brand new for them as well. And so they've been kind of working along through the progress with me and understanding like the hurdles and stuff like that. And finally it went through the chief administrative officer, and then on February 6th they let it pass. And I mean, it's been crazy since then. Yeah.
So I'd like to get into that a bit more, but I think you said you were mad and upset with how the city was being run. So tell me more about that. What is it that you saw in the city and that was causing you to be upset?
Well, you are way smarter than I am. I can tell that just by the way you write your tweets. But, in school, and I mean like high school, was basically the last education I received outside of trade school. Um, but we would do things where like we'd pick a side of a debate, and then we'd switch sides really quick. So now we're debating the complete opposite of what we had been studying for. But we were supposed to study both sides. So like I would ask you, and this was what I asked myself before I handed this in, and same with my wife, was like, really think about this before you hand it in, like this would affect her. But I would ask you, like, if you were a supporter of the mayor, what could you defend that she's done well so far as mayor? Right. And so I really thought about that. And now I'm literally asking you, what has she done that is defensible of, being a good mayor? Like if you
Yeah,
had
well,
to pick
yeah.
something.
And you're really asking me right now.
I'm legit asking you because I
Okay.
need to know. Yeah.
Well, the one thing is I don't live in Calgary, so I'm in Edmonton,
Right.
but I can certainly tell you a few things that are causing me concern with what mayors I see doing. And I've called the mayor out here in Edmonton about it, and I see them really going, and you did ask me about something good, right? So maybe I
Yeah.
should just stop there because I actually can't. I haven't followed it enough either.
Which is fair, but when I'm getting signatures, like
Yeah,
people who want to sign it will stop and talk for anywhere from 5 minutes to literally 2 or 3 hours, and they won't leave because there's no one else that is listening to them. And so me and a commissioner,
yeah,
another witness, are literally having the same conversation 30, 40, 50 times an hour at sometimes. But then at the same time, I'm just like, someone will walk by and we're like, hey, you want to sign a petition? And these people will give us a sneer and be like, no, we love the mayor. And then I'm just like, okay, that's awesome, but what part do you love about her? And then they
hmm
just walk away, and I'm just like legit curious, like, what has she done well? Like, I don't know if I'm naive to it or I just am stupid and I don't see what she's doing well, but it's very hard to defend her position as a leader of the city when nobody can tell me what she's doing well, including the mayor. When I had a meeting with her, like I'm not sure if you wanted to get to that, but I had a meeting with her, and the two things that she said, I mean, there were two other people in that room, so if I misquote this, somebody else that was in there could um, correct me. But I asked her, I said, do you realize that people in Calgary are struggling whether to pay for groceries and rent, in the same month? Like they kind of have to choose between the two of them, or full groceries or whatever, or have rent delayed. And she seemed like shocked by that almost, like, which was really disheartening, that like maybe she really doesn't see how much people are struggling with the taxes that keep piling up on us. Um, but then I asked her, I said, well, okay, well, what about safety? Like, what do you think about safety in the city? Because a lot of people don't ride our transit because it's dangerous. Like there's homeless people, there's drug addicts that use it as, because where else are they going to go? Because these places are warm and safe for them usually, right? I don't blame people for going into a C train, but that makes other people feel uncomfortable. And so I said, well, what's your stance on that? You guys won't even take the C train. And then she says, oh, well, safety's never been better in this city. And I was just like, what metrics are you using? Like I legit asked her, I said, like, what metrics are you using? When was the last time you walked downtown Calgary? When was the last time you've been on a C train without 3 or 4 security guards? Like, it's like she seems like not aware of what's happening in the city. Like she just goes to her city council and then drives home and then maybe goes and does a couple photo ops. Like, but outside of that, it doesn't seem like she has an understanding of like what's happening in like real Calgary, not what's happening in her own little world. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's really interesting how I want to get back to when you were talking to people that are signing the petition, because I think
Mhm.
what you said was very informative. You said that people will be talking to you for even an hour or longer, or obviously sometimes shorter, because no one is listening. That's something you said.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important to highlight and talk about, because I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, is that citizens, regular, good, law abiding Calgarians just want to have a conversation. They want some answers. They want some clarity, some direction from their leaders. And it seems like that's just not happening. But what you also said was interesting is the people that were supportive of her and her action never stopped to talk about what that action was. They just walked away.
Yeah.
And then you talked about what kind of environment the mayor is living in, because when you asked her about safety, for example, there's, and like, it doesn't take a lot to see that it's not pleasant in downtown. Like I go to Calgary quite a bit, um, and I was just recently at that superstore in downtown,
Right.
and I was there late, right as it was closing, and there's the elevator there, and I was like, oh god, I hope I don't die here today. That literally ran through my head
Yeah, it's
as
not
I was.
safe for anybody. Like especially like vulnerable people or more vulnerable people, right? Like it's not a safe place to be in. What recently they upped the parking pass price for nurses at hospitals, probably because there hasn't been like a raise in a while, but also to help encourage them to take the transit more. And it's just like, no, nurses don't want to take a C train after 11 p.m. shift and have to spend an hour and a half getting home. Like that is like, they're so obtuse of like how dangerous that actually is for like, a small nurse or like I said, anybody that, is going to be traveling that late at night by themselves on a C train. Um, and then it just comes back to that she was all for defunding the police, but then adds a security budget for her own house. Like these people just really don't understand how hypocritical their actions are, right? Like it's just like, if they're a leader, they should lead by example, right? Like ride that C train. Like if you really believed in a climate emergency, then be the first one on the C train every single day. Have your security guards take a transit from their house to your house, pick you up, take a bus to the C train station, hop on that C train station, make sure to leave an hour and a half before, you start work so you're not late, and then do the same thing on the way home. Like how freaking cool would that be if every single counselor was forced to ride city transit? Like just imagine how much better transit would be if the people who design it and are responsible for it had to ride it. Like it just seems so basic. Or I don't know. It's stuff like that. Little stuff would really help us to have trust back in our government. Like they're just the tiniest little things, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you nailed it. Like safety would immediately get better, but also you're practicing what you're preaching. Like, and that's, I think, that's something you'll find very frustrating. It's like, okay, if there's a massive climate emergency, fine. Well, then what are you doing? You can't just tell everyone else to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, she takes a 3 car. I think it's a 3 car like motorcade everywhere she goes. It's just like, those aren't electric vehicles she's taking. Those are gas
Yeah.
guzzling monsters. You know what I mean? Like be the change you want to see. Don't tell everybody else to do it and then you do the opposite. Like it's just
Yeah.
frustrating. It's just like if they really believed in it. And I looked up the word emergency, and it has a lot to do with getting things done now, or like think of like emergency vehicle. They're getting to your house as fast as they can, but what they're doing is they just create red tape and these like green initiatives that take forever, and they're not more environmentally responsible, like shipping like solar panels from across the sea on big gas guzzling oil rig or oil or transport ships or whatever. Like that's not environmentally safe. Like that's going to cost you more carbon footprint than it would be just to use the clean, or as clean as you can get, coal and oil that we use in Calgary already. Like it should be a transition. It shouldn't be just like a $3 billion a year, like, hey, let's destroy a generation or two.
So we're getting into the big picture here, and
mm,
I know we're short on time today, so I want to get to, you did say that you brought up with the mayor taxes and safety as two main concerns. So I just saw one of the interviews you did really early on with mainstream media, and I want to talk about mainstream media a little bit as well.
okay.
And what I heard in that interview at the beginning is that you, I think you work as an HVAC installer, is that
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And so you were going into people's houses and everyone was kind of complaining about the same thing. Is that right?
Yeah, everyone's complaining about everything always, right? So
Yeah.
this was
Well,
just because of the single use bylaw back when I first started this. That was a big topic for everybody because everyone was like, "Why am I paying $1 for a bag that's already recyclable? Like, where's the logic in that?"
yeah. And when you have every other item from the grocery store already has plastic on it, it's like we're not really changing much. But anyway, so that was just something that helped you initiate this, right? Like you already had your own frustrations and concerns, and then you were walking into people's houses and they were expressing frustrations and concerns. Then you heard about the Riley recall and you're like, let me see if I could do something about this. Is
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
kind of okay?
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, not just people's houses, but like even like on the internet, you'd run into like forums that you would normally think are like really left leaning, and even they were complaining about the single use bylaw and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm just like, wow. And then that's when I was just like, wow, everyone just like, complains about everything, but they never do anything. And I was just like, um, you know what? This is the same way I run my business. Like if I have a customer that like has an issue with the furnace, and I'm like, wow, this is not the customer's fault. This is not my fault. This is like a manufacturer defect. Like I think at one point I sent back and forth like 100 different emails between like 3 or 4 different manufacturer reps and stuff. And like when I get on a trail of like even like the tiniest injustice, like to some people it might be like, Landon, just let it go, but like I do not stop until I at least get some sort of resolution. And every single person I fought for through like anything with my business, like I usually find like a really good resolution. And like sometimes they'll just like get so mad with me that they'll just like give me a new furnace, be like, Landon, this is 100+ emails, like just take a new furnace, get out of our hair. But I'm just like, but no, you guys made a mistake with your bad furnace and you're leaving me to deal with it. Like that's not fair. Then like the customer, has a bad furnace, they blame me. And then I'm like, well, I didn't do anything, I installed it properly. And then I bring it to the manufacturer, and then they're like, well, that's not our fault. But anyway, it's just like I see like a tiny little injustice, and it's just like that's just like in my blood to like fight for, you know, I don't know, the little guy. I don't know what it is, but I just don't like injustice. Like,
Well, and I think that's so awesome. And I'm with you 100% that we hear a lot of people complaining about things and then not taking action. But from what I've seen online with this campaign, you have a lot of people that are willing to step up now. Like you're really, you're the one that figured it out. And I would like to talk a little bit about that as well. We don't have to get into all the details about how to get that started. But basically, you said it was $500. You had to go to the city. And they were helping you out throughout the process on how to get everything in order, right?
yeah,
And then, the support just came. It seems like,
oh yeah,
and and so I'd like to hear about that. And but what that shows to me is that this was really the perfect time to do it, because it just seems like everyone, like you already heard, you had your own frustration, you heard from people you were walking into their houses to, even on left leaning sites that you were looking at, people were getting a bit frustrated and annoyed. And then just the right time and the momentum was there. So how did it get started with all of the support? Because like you have your hat on right now, and this was just in February, right?
hmm yeah. Just like the second it went live on the website, I get a call from the city, and they say, "Hey, Landon, it's live on the website." And at first, I was actually a little upset because it doesn't say what part of the website it has to be on. And so I like sent an email to the city girls at the clerk's office. I'm like, is there any chance we could put it on like the front page? And so they grudgingly helped me get it, but it was like you had to like scroll down to the bottom to like today's headlines, and it was like on this like weird little banner. But I mean that was enough by itself. Um, and then actually, the other thing I did was the night before I thought it was going to come out, I sent an email just to a bunch of media people, um, not knowing if it was a big story. I think I even said, "Hey, I'm not sure if this is a big story, but I filed a petition against the mayor," and then that was all the email said. And then, sure enough, the next morning, I think it went live at like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and then all heck broke loose. Like it was, I think I had I can't remember because like the email got so full it stopped counting on the top. It just said "and more" or something. So I think it was between like 6 and 14,000 the first day alone of
Wow.
emails. Um,
Yeah.
and then I think it was about 900 phone calls I had the first 2 or 3 days.
And
Um,
was it questions, support? What was the majority of the inquiries?
where do I sign?
Ah,
Like 99% of them. And even like I think it was the next 3 or 4 days later I like started actually scrolling through the emails, and there was people calling me from all over the world. Like I don't even know how people heard about it. I mean, obviously it went to the news and stuff, but it like I got calls from California, Louisiana, Florida, like right across Canada, um, some from Europe, and I just didn't understand why it was such a big deal at the start. But then people started telling me, they're just like, Landon, this is really important to us because this is a very large city that you're starting this petition for. And a lot of people were like, Landon, we're dealing with a very corrupt mayor in our town. We're dealing with a lot of unfair policies, and they're just like, we need to know if people care enough to stand up and fight back. And they're like, we're going to keep an eye on what you're doing because if enough people support you, then there's a good chance there'll be enough people to support us in their efforts to recall or fight back against unfair policies in their own city. So the support came from everywhere. There's I think Counter Signal with Keenan. He was very supportive because he actually had the website recallgondek.com. And so when I was trying to figure out who has this website already, and it went to his. And so I think he had planned on filing this or something before. And then there was a couple other groups that had actually been planning on filing this petition. I just beat them to it, right? So they were waiting till it was going to be warmer out, which is smart. But my anger has
It's been a nice winter, thankfully.
Well, yes, but pens stopped working at about -5. So that's been a huge boundary for us. Definitely I think there's about 2 or 3 weeks of this 6 months where it's been almost too cold to even go door knocking or even be outside.
So what's been the best strategy that you have found? Is it staying in one place, making an announcement, going door to door?
So about 30 days in, I hired a professional that knows how to do this, all this stuff. And so her idea was to set up little stations, one in the south, one in the central, one in the north. And we basically have shifts of volunteers and commissioners at each location. And then I think we've sent 250,000 emails out to the people who supported us at the start. So like tens of thousands of emails. So we had them, and we would email them every day of the new locations we'd be at. So we'd go to a different neighborhood every day. And those have honestly brought in anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 plus every single day, just being in a neighborhood. So we'll be in Scenic Acres one day, and I think we got 2,500 signatures in one day, a lineup around the block at some point of people walking up signing it. But then people would also come, because we've had a commissioner at these locations, that they would come and drop off stacks and stacks of finished petitions, right? So that they had gotten themselves. So that's been a really, really good strategy. And then obviously we've had pub locations around the city of pub owners who obviously were just super brave. That's, to knowingly put yourself in the line of fire is, to me, one of the bravest things you could do, because they're aware of how evil people are out there, and they did it anyways. And even to know this petition itself is going to be impossible, to allow us to use their small business as a place for us to set up shop. They usually give us a little booth where we can put some signs up, and then we'll put it on the website, and then people can come by the pubs.
Did the pubs get put? Do you know if they got pushback? The ones that
huge pushback. Even today, Brixton's, they've been getting lots of 1-star reviews, and a lot of them are people who've never been there. And that's just, like I said, evil people. Same with my business. People have been leaving me 1-star reviews for people I've never done work with. It's just something I would never do to somebody. You know what I mean? It's just such a low blow for a small business person to get a negative review, because people look at reviews, right? So
well,
so
I suspect a lot of those people have never, put themselves on the line like that to open something up. I'm the same. I had a small business as well, and we care so much about what others say about your business.
Well, and it's a ticket for my food, right? That puts food on my table, right? And this is what puts food on Um, like there's been a bunch of like Fresh Market, Avenida Fresh and something
Local.
local, Fresh and Local,
Local.
sorry. Like they've been huge. I think they've had someone there every single day this whole time, right? So again, like just these businesses that just care more about, what they believe in than what other people want to attack them with. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really expect that much of a pushback when I filed this. I mean, I didn't think about much when I filed this, to be honest. But it's
Except for that you were doing the right thing and trying to stand up and be civically engaged. That's something that kind of surprised me, as well as some of the silly attacks. I'll put it in the nicest terms possible.
sure.
Like I commented on when it was Respect Gondek, the vandalism. And I was like, what you're doing is legal. I don't like, regardless of the signs, I don't know whether or not where they were placed, but to do a recall is legal. There's legislation for it. And this is a great way to get citizens involved and communicating and sending a message to elected officials. We should be encouraging this. Even if you don't agree with it, then go and support the mayor. That's your option, but don't diss somebody for putting in their opinions and trying to be engaged civically. So that has been something that I just, maybe I'm a little bit shocked that that's where the conversation has gone, but at the same time, nothing surprises me anymore.
Well, and what these knuckleheads don't understand is that I'm doing this for them as well, because not only am I trying to get the mayor to resign because of, how good of a job she's doing in our city, but I'm also fighting for the legislation to be changed, right? And that legislation is so ridiculous that even the UCP government will not touch it, right? They're so afraid of helping me guide through the legislation, then that risks them being exposed to how absolutely evil it was for them to even have it, right? So not only am I fighting to get the legislation changed, that would help other people. Now, let's say they keep, like Rick McIver says, it should never be easy to get rid of a duly elected official. And I'm like, Rick McIver, at no point was this ever about making it easy. This was just about making it fair, right? Because what they've had is 40% of the entire population. Like any person with any sort of brain would say, hey, that's impossible. But he's
Yeah.
looking at as it like, he's doing us a favor by giving us this.
Well, and what I would like to add to that is it's not about getting rid of somebody, but it's number one, calling attention to their actions. And if you're doing a good job, this conversation, nobody would be
Right,
having this conversation. There would be no question or concern about having a recall. So let's focus on what you're doing. If there's a problem, let's address it. And then we'll all be on our merry way. Like, I don't think anybody's interested in putting in the time, effort, and money, it sounds like, into doing this petition thing
right.
that you've put in. But if we had, more responsible and better communication
Hmm.
between our elected officials, I don't think anybody would be looking. This is like a final result when things are broken. And that's unfortunately where I think some of the issues are, is that a lot of, regular law abiding citizens have lost trust in their public officials. They have lost trust in their public institutions. And this is one little way of calling attention to it.
It shouldn't be a little way though, because this is the least favorable mayor in the history of Calgary that I can find. It's very hard to find statistics from way back when, but in recent times, or at least as long as I've lived here, she's been the least favorable mayor. Now, well, with Landon, it's not a popularity contest. Well, it kind of is, because if you are doing a good job, then people are
For
going
the
to be,
majority of the people.
yeah, people are going to be very favorable of what you're doing, right? So she's got less favorable rating than the amount of votes she got in the last election. So even her own voters are upset with what she's doing. And again,
Yeah.
she's so obtuse that she doesn't see that there's a problem. And this was, again, like you said, this was our way of speaking, but it shouldn't be a little way, because somebody that bad at their job should lose their job. And if
Yeah,
this,
and when I said little, I want to correct you. I didn't
okay,
mean as in it's a little effort or a little thing, but it's it's something citizens can do. That's all I meant in that way.
Well,
It's you don't have the power per se, like, the mayor or somebody else, that they just make a rule. This is one tool that citizens have, and it takes a lot of effort, actually.
yeah, exactly. And I kind of was doing a bit of like rough math of like what it would have taken us to successfully get rid of this mayor. Sorry, you wouldn't even get close. Like to get around 400,000 signatures, you would need about 1,000 people. Okay, you would need $500,000, and you'd need about 3 months prep time, right? So with this legislation, even if you had all three of those things, some dummy could basically file this at any time and ruin your preparation, right? And not only that, not only could I file for this petition, I could hand it in the next day and protect that mayor for the rest of
For the
her.
rest of the time. Oh, good, really good point. That's something I hadn't considered.
Yeah, just
Um,
another flaw in it, right?
yeah, so I want to touch two more things before we go. Have you seen the support continue to increase, or has it decreased now?
No, by the closer we get to the final date, like the more support we've had. And again, like the volunteers have been absolutely awesome. Like they've been out 16 hours a day, some people out getting signatures, bugging their friends and family. That's not easy to do, especially when you know they're not going to be favorable to what you're complaining about or whatever. But there are a lot of people out there pushing the subject to those, to at least have an opportunity for people out there. But without like the volunteers, like literal blood, sweat, and tears, this would have literally just been me walking around getting signatures, like in my neighborhood, which I was going to do anyway. But now it's just like this small army of people who really, really care about their city and are
Mhm.
done. I call it the woke agenda, which I was told not to call it a woke agenda, but I don't really know what else to call it, right? Because it's an agenda that doesn't reflect the needs and wants of everybody. Like a woke agenda to me usually is like a small minority of people who scream the loudest, whereas like these taxes that they keep filing on us are affecting everybody, even the people that disagree with, like they're still paying the same taxes and they're still
Yeah.
struggling with the same things we're struggling with, but they're fighting me like I'm doing something to them. It's like, no, I'm not doing anything to you. You have every right to file your own petition. And I've even like encouraged and willing to pay for other people to file a petition against people I'm favorable of, because I care more about the process and more about our democratic rights to speak up, that I'd be willing to pay for somebody's ability to fight back, even if I disagree with them. Like that's
Yeah.
what this is about. This is about us all having the power um, over our government. Like, what a weird thing to say, but it's true. We've lost every single piece of power we've ever had. And yeah, voting is, the most important thing. But man, they can just run havoc on us for 4 years and we have nothing to say about it.
Well, this is where I don't disagree, but this is where I want to highlight what you're doing. We always, like, I hear so much, we have no power, we have no control, but there is options.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's been a huge learning curve, and if more people were involved earlier, if you had 3 months prep time, all of that stuff, you could have probably been quite a bit more
Yeah.
successful. But the power is there. I just really feel like a lot of us don't understand the system. So I'm all about trying to help elevate that conversation so that we're not starting from like behind the start line. At least let's start on the start line so that then we can affect change better. And before you go, the last thing I want to ask about, at least some general comments. How has the mainstream media been with you?
I would like to say they've been awesome, only because I've never watched one piece of anything I've ever been in. Um, so I don't know. They've been very friendly to me in person. You know what? That's a lie. I did read one article, and I was like driving home one day, and I can't remember. It was like Post Media or something, but I was like driving home, and they're like, "Landon, can you give us some comments?" I'm like, "Sure," but then they like literally, like, just like you and I are talking right now, I'm not very articulate. Like stuff's happening in my brain, but at some point, by the time it gets to my mouth, it's like all jingle jarbled. And so they like literally wrote word for word me saying and all this stuff. But I was like trying to drive and like put my blinker on and stuff, like be aware around me. on speakerphone, and they like literally wrote word for word. I'm like, that's so embarrassing because, I'm usually a little bit more articulate than what they portrayed me as.
Yeah.
But I mean, other than that, I mean, without them, nobody would have really known about this. I mean, other than
But they did reach out to you.
they reached out to me every day or almost every day.
Still now, every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because something's always changing. Like something's always happening. There's always somebody else who said something, and just a lot of stuff I wasn't prepared for because you know
Like,
what? We should.
can you give an example? Like, I'm surprised that they can report on this every day. All I hear is they don't have enough resources. They can't write every story, and to report on this every single day.
Well, because like I think last week there was like a leaked email about some group, Project YYC, that had some names or something on it, and so they wanted like all my comments on it. And I made like one mistake that I thought I hadn't had been dealing with them or hadn't known about them, but then I realized like the same group that I had been dealing with the whole time was Project YYC. I just didn't make the connection. And so like they were really curious about that, and I really still don't understand why. I mean, because no UCP government has ever, like, no one in the UCP government has ever reached out to me. This is literally just Landon
Yeah.
doing this. And then, like I said, other groups out there, they might be UCP members, they might be NDP members, but they've all, come together with
But
volunteers and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw my comments. I was like, that's exactly what civic democracy like
Mm-hmm.
needs and requires. It's not just one person that has to do it all. You could have a coordinated effort of people working together.
Right.
Like that's a community. That's how you make change and things like that. So I just thought that was silly. I don't even know what the point of that was. Is that wow, people are working together again? We should be applauding it and not poo-pooing it.
I know that they make it sound like to be associated with someone else just because they don't like them is wrong for you to like be associated with them, and that's so dangerous. Like, not everybody is bad, not everybody is out to get everybody, and it's just like, well, you know what, everyone makes mistakes. Like, I've got I've made I make mistakes every single day. Like, nobody's perfect. And if
Welcome
we
to
were to,
life.
well, exactly, and if we were to hold like these other organizations that aren't in favor of what we're doing, if we were to hold them accountable to like the same way they hold us accountable, like they would be in a big major shock, right? I just it's just sad. Like, it's just a weird state of affairs. Like, as long as we're fighting each other, we're not fighting them, right? And them is like the government that holds all this power over us, and gives us crumbs and tells us to feed ourselves. And it's just like, you know what, if we were just like to get together, like, I'm not just saying like we have to get together like right versus left, but if we just like understand, like, if we just stop fighting for 1 minute and look at like why we're fighting, and then be like, hey, this is our decision, everything we do is up to us, but we leave it up to them, and they don't care about us, right? The first thing they think of when they wake up is, what decision today is going to help me get reelected, right? That's their first thought. And I've seen it so many times in the last 2 months with these politicians, and it really pisses me off. It pisses me off so much that even though I'm exhausted, it's like reignited my fight. And I've been told to be careful. Like, a lot of people have told me to be careful about like fighting the government, but I really don't care. Right? It's just like, if no one else is going to do it, then I'm going to try. And even if I get burnt, then I can at least look back and say I tried, right? Like, I don't know. I'm hoping more people will be encouraged. Like, the volunteers that have come out to support me, like, there's got to be more of us out there that can let their voices be heard. And you know what? Some of that, I'm really going to start to encourage people, like, to start running for office, because these establishment people just keep getting in, right? But we need people, like normal people, that have like a teacher or nurse, or even like a paralegal, whatever. You don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to have a degree. Like, these people aren't smart. Like, they're not good smart people that I really believe they were. They're just evil people. Like, they just care about getting money for themselves. They care about supporting those who donated to their parties. Like, I've seen so much of this now that I really want people to think like, hey, I could do a do a better job. Well, guess what? You probably could do a better job. So if you never try, you're never going to know. So I just hope
I
more
don't
people get involved. Like you said, committees or helping out your neighborhood. Like there's always like things you could do, and I hope more people care. Like I hope more people get involved.
I very much agree. And I think your takeaway message is this is about, having a better society and better run government for everyone. This isn't about just Landon Johnston and recalling the mayor. Let's have a safer city. Why would anybody be against that? Let's try to reduce taxes. Why would anybody be against that if it's possible? And so I think encouraging people to run is so important. And I'll just leave you with this at the end because I don't know if you know, I don't know the timeline, but there was a provincial party of Alberta farmers that won at one point because it was kind of the same thing. They were fed up with what was going on politically, and farmers came together and they won a majority in Alberta. And this is way back when. So this isn't the first time, but yes, people need to get involved. They need to start running for office. And I think it's a massive opportunity when there's more diverse people at the table. It's always much better. So I know you do have to run.
Yeah, I gotta go play. So thank you for
So
having me on.
my pleasure. Thanks so much for having us and giving us an update about your great initiative.
Yeah, and thank you for support on Twitter. It's definitely a breath of fresh air because, like I said, the minority's usually the loudest in like forums and stuff. But it's nice to have like you don't even have to be supportive. You just have to be like, somewhat fair. Like everyone should be fair. You don't have to always agree with everybody, and people are gonna, are allowed to have questions and stuff. But it is a breath of fresh air to have people like you on Twitter. So I do appreciate that.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I can as well.
Thank you. Hope you have a good night.
You too.
Yeah. Bye.